Over the past 50 years, fast food chain Famous Brands has grown from a single fast food store in Bellevue, Johannesburg, to the largest group of restaurants in the country, encompassing nearly 30 brands. Well, joining us in studio to discuss the outlook for Famous Brands is Finweek Editor Jana Marais. Hi, Jana.
Hi.
So we've seen that Famous Brands has recently reported a great turnover, and it's been like this for the past 15 years. Why is the company doing so well?
Yeah, it's really an incredible South African success story in terms of how they've managed to grow their portfolio of brands. And I think one of the big things is actually the wide range of, brands that they do own. And it's strong brands, the likes of Steers and Debonair's and all of those. But also they've been very good at controlling their own distribution and manufacturing facilities. So that is, especially on the manufacturing side, they recently bought a tomato paste factory, for example. So they've really increased the control that they have over their own supply chain, which obviously enables you to control the costs. But it's also worth mentioning that they don't always get everything right, even though 15 years of consecutive years of record profits certainly is quite impressive. But some of their brands have struggled. At the moment, Wakaberry is an example, the frozen yogurt brand. It was a big fad, and it seems to have died out. So they're really looking at what they're going to do with that brand. So they don't always get it right, but they certainly know how to do business in that space.
To pick up on that particular theme, though, and you mentioned the distribution and manufacturing center, isn't that what's really key to Famous Brands managing to remain defensive despite the challenging economic times we're in?
Yes, I think what was very interesting for me that came out of the interview with Kevin Hedderwick is that they realized that in South Africa, they're very South Africa focused still, and they realized that the mainstream middle income market in South Africa is not going to grow at this point. So the only way you can actually grow your business is if you're stealing market share from other players. And what their strategy is to offer the best quality product at the best value. And of course, you can compete on price if you actually have that kind of control over your supply chain and the costs involved. So yes, it certainly has been working for them.
How has their strategy changed as they have expanded into the rest of Africa?
Yes, that's also quite interesting because I think everyone is revisiting their Africa growth strategies given the tough economic climate we're seeing in many other African countries. So Famous Brands has been operating on the continent for 20 years, so they're certainly not a newbie. Currently earn about 10% of their profit from the continent, and a few years back, Africa was the new frontier for Famous Brands, and they were targeting 25% of profit coming from there. And they've certainly backtracked on that. So they continue to grow their operations. I think they're planning over 40 new branches in the next financial year. But they no longer see it as the big growth story for them. It's not, the words that Kevin used was, it's not going to move the needle for us. So they certainly are, they see opportunities for brands like Debonair's, for example, but it's not going to be where they expand massively in future.
And isn't that so true? Because we see it with Tasha's as well as even Debonair's themselves moving into India and the UAE, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So clearly giving us some kind of direction as to chasing the consumer, chasing the numbers again. Do you think that they might remain quite bullish on further expansions in those particular markets?
Look, they're quite bullish on the UK, so they're looking for acquisitions, and I think the new CEO, that will be a big part of his job as well.
I'd be worried about Brexit there, though. People still need to eat, right?
Well, but also they've done business there for 10 years. They've really built Wimpy there, is their big brand there. And I think they always get compared to Nando's, and Nando's is phenomenal growth, global growth story. And for them, it hasn't been, they don't really have that brand yet in their portfolio that's going to make them the next McDonald's or the next Burger King. So they say that they're looking for acquisitions. Brands like Tasha's, they think, is exportable, so they're building their second one, or they're going to open their second one in Dubai next year. They see opportunity for Mug and Bean as well internationally. But yeah, it will be that what they really want is a big acquisition that's going to make them a truly global business.
I just actually wanted to also pick up on the leadership. As you've mentioned, Kevin Hedderwick quite influential in the leadership of the organization and driving this acquisition process. But he's no longer chief executive. David Healy now at the helm. What do you make of the change in dynamics?
Look, I think the concern is if you've followed, for example, what happened at Truworths, where you had a long-standing CEO stepping down, making space for a new one, but hanging around to kind of show the person the ropes, and then, fast forward a few months and the new CEO is out and the old one is back in. So I think there is a concern from investors that if you're moving over to a new CEO, but the old one is probably still a bit too influential. But then on the other hand, Kevin Hedderwick's got, he's got serious, people respect him immensely. And I think it probably frees him up to look at real strategy stuff. And the new CEO has been in the business for a long time. And I think there's a lot of things that they're doing in South Africa. If you look at the number of acquisitions, we've talked about the manufacturing side, but they're also looking at building their sit-down convenience dinner kind of, those restaurants, Turn and Tenders, and they've recently bought some Italian restaurants in Durban. So they certainly are continue to focus on building their exposure to the upper end, upper income brands. So I think there's a lot of work probably for to keep both of them quite busy.
Exactly.
So it will be interesting to see.
On a lighter note, I'm a Wimpy girl, so clearly they are done by with regard to acquisitions on their front. Holly, I'm not too sure if you were Debonair's girl or Mug and Bean.
I'm a Mug and Bean girl, and I'm quite sad to hear about Wakaberry as well. I would have liked to have that pick up and keep going forward, but what can you do? Summer's
around the corner, so let's hope that it does pick up slightly. We'll leave it there. Jana, thank you so much for your time today. That was Jana Marais, Finweek Editor.